Like many people who are passionate about psychology, the evolution of species and the evolution of man captivates you. You've devoured documentaries about Jane Goodall studying chimpanzees, you know Washoe and Koko, those primates who learned sign language, and you loved the book Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. If you haven't already done so, you're dying to visit the caves of Lascaux to understand where we come from. What all these subjects have in common is the theory of evolution, which rightly fascinates many clinicians. We all feel very close to it, and at the same time so far away from it, as if there were a gap between the hard sciences and psychology, and we don't dare to cross it. However, new data in evolutionary sciences and psychology make it now legitimate to take this step. Are you ready? For almost 80 years, it was thought that the principles of evolution applied only to genes, but in the last 10 years or so, it has become clear that behavior plays a very important role in evolution, especially in the evolution of mankind, and that the principles of evolution also apply to behavior. A little reminder of how it works at the genetic level. First of all, there is variation. During sexual reproduction, half of the chromosomal heritage of a man and half of the chromosomal heritage of a woman come together to give birth to a new being. The number of possible combinations is incredibly large, with the exception of identical twins. Each being is unique, and variation is the norm. Then, among all the variations that appear, some will turn out to be more adapted than others to the environment in which the organism lives. For example, elephants that come into the world with larger ears survive better because larger ears help to dissipate heat better. Finally, the variations that are best adapted to the environment in which the organism lives tend to be more conserved, as they are passed on to the next generation, since those who possess them reproduce more. We now know that these three evolutionary principles, variation, selection, retention, also act at the behavioral level. First, behaviors vary. For example, we rarely address a person the same way twice. You can open a door with your right hand, with your left hand, looking at your phone, or with your arms loaded with packages. It is always a matter of opening a door. Then, some of these behavioral variations will prove to be more appropriate than others. For example, it may be easier for me to open the door with my right hand if I'm right-handed. Or conversely, it may take me a long time to open the door if I'm on my phone or have my arms full of groceries. Finally, the most adapted behaviors tend to be reproduced more than others. I will certainly learn to open the door with my right hand without carrying packages. The principles of evolution therefore apply to behavior as much as to genes. Just as individuals adapted to their environment reproduce more, behaviors adapted to their environment are more often repeated. Variation, selection, and retention act at all levels on all time scales. The question then arises as to why certain behaviors that are clearly harmful to us manage to reproduce. Why do some of us continue to consume drugs or overeat even though we know it puts us at risk? Why do we obey our fears, our shame, our anger, when we find that it prevents us from living the life we want? Conversely, why do we sometimes get stuck not doing the right thing when change is at hand?
Bonjour, Angélique. Émotive.
Bonjour, Angélique.
Evolution is not going off the rails in these moments. It is also useless to imagine that these psychological difficulties would be useful for our species. They correspond, in fact, to adaptations to two restricted parts of the environment, to what happens in the short term rather than the long-term consequences. Or conversely, by not looking at what is happening in front of our eyes, too busy imagining a future or rethinking the past. Sometimes we also adapt too much to what we think and not enough to what is. Or conversely, we don't dream enough. It is the challenge of contemporary psychology to use the knowledge gathered by evolutionary sciences to understand and help those whose behaviors have adapted to small parts of their environment.